Now, I've made a lot of videos on marine batteries for kayaks, big boats, and small boats because it's the #1 thing that I see most commonly overlooked with new boat owners, especially tiny boat owners. I know my very first boat battery, it absolutely left me stranded 3 to 4 times. One time, 3 miles from the boat ramp with nothing but an emergency paddle. Luckily, I was with my buddy in his skiff and he was able to tow us back to safety. So I own Tiny Boat Talk. It's a Facebook group with about 10,000 members of tiny boat owners. And these setups that I see all the time, the batteries, you know, even people taking a picture at Walmart saying, hey, I think I'm gonna get this battery, shows me that there's just a lot of lack of understanding when it comes to batteries. So today we're going to do a little bit of schooling and a crash course on batteries and talk about this specific battery, no other brand, this specific one, because they are doing something for a price that no one else can pull off, and it's just now kind of hitting the market. So anyway, first of all, let's talk about the traditional lead acid AGM batteries versus lithium. Now, I've covered this topic a lot and I've got dedicated videos on it, so we'll just kind of brush through it. But lithium is, without a doubt, just wipes the floor with lead acid. I mean, if we're comparing a 100 amp hour lithium battery, this right here, or a 100 amp hour lead acid battery, you can just don't even know what to tell you. It is a night and day difference. First of all, this battery is a 100 amp hour lithium battery and it only weighs 23 pounds. I had a 50 amp hour lead acid battery that weighed 60 pounds. And I think the 100 amp hours are somewhere around there. It depends on what you get, but for the sake of the video, we'll say 23 pounds for the same rated capacity lithium battery versus a 60 pound 100 amp hour lead acid. So as you can see, major weight savings right there, a third of the weight, which is actually huge when you're lifting it in and out, especially if you have a tiny boat where you're lifting it in and out every single trip. It really adds up and hurts your back. The second, and for me, it's not even the weight, it is hands down the actual usage capacity, the depth of discharge in the voltage curve. Now, it's a bunch of mumbo jumbo. Basically what it means is if you buy just listen, if you buy a 100 amp hour lead acid battery, you're only going to get 50 amp hours out of it. Why? Because once you hit 50% capacity, you're going to be running below 12 volts, which is going to underpower your electronics. It is going to underpower and basically hurt things. But with lithium, they're rated for 100 to 95% depth of discharge, which means you get basically 95 to 100, which basically means you get 95 to 100 amp hours versus only 50 with the way that the lead acid and AGM technology perform. So yeah, you get a third of the weight and double the runtime. Pretty incredible. Also, lithium batteries are getting extremely cheap. At first, I ran lead acid starting battery, and then I ran a lead acid, then I ran a lead acid, then I ran a lead acid 50 amp hour. Both of them left me stranded. And then finally prices came down and I got a 100 amp hour. Now, at the time of recording, they are getting expensive again because of the tariffs, but that is hopefully temporary. So, all right, we summed it up. Third of the weight and double the run time and very similar costs, if not the same costs, at least it was a month ago for certain models. Okay, so you're sold on deep cycle lithium batteries. Great, good job. Go get wattcycle. I like this battery, but that's not the point of today's video. Now let's talk about the difference between a cranking battery and a starting battery. I got a lead acid cranking battery, and boy, I went fast for about 5 minutes with my trolling motor, and then over the next 30 minutes, died, stranded, over and over and over. I didn't know what the difference was. Basically, a deep cycle battery is supposed to slowly discharge electrical currents for long periods of time, running trolling motors for hours on end. We're talking about bilge pumps, we're talking about electronics like sound systems, fish finders, transducers, black boxes, anything that's electronic on your boat will be ran, for the most part, depending on the setup and how it's wired, with a deep cycle battery, right? You don't need a sharp burst of energy to power a trolling motor or a fish finder. Now, a cranking battery, on the other hand, gives you big bursts of energy to start a motor, an electric start when you turn the motor on or when you electric start your outboard. And cranking batteries are not meant to discharge lower electrical currents for all day and weeks at a time, right? So I would use all of my juice up really, really quickly. Okay, great. So to start your boat, you need a 60 pound lead acid cranking battery, but to power my electronic, I need a separate 23 pound deep cycle battery. That's too much going on. I was talking to my buddy the other day who was asking me, he's like, dude, do they make, he's like, I know you're the lithium battery guy because I've had 30 different brands. I'm not even joking. I've had so many lithium batteries through sponsorships and just different experiments on this channel. And he's like, do they make a cranking battery? I said, no, they do not make a cranking battery. You cannot use a lithium battery deep cycle to crank a motor. And then I kid you not, the stars aligned, Wattcycle reached out and said, would you like to try out our dual purpose lithium battery? And I said, huh? I've been waiting for this to come out because I thought it would make a very interesting video. It's here. It's literally here. Now, we did some research, and there are some other people actually doing this. There are some other brands, but the cheapest one I found was $800. Right now, you can get this one for $499. I don't want to speak for Wattcycle. When I first got this battery, it was before the tariffs hit, and I think it was a little bit cheaper, but regardless, you can use code Greyson for 5% off, maybe 6%. I'm not sure. I'll pop it up on the screen, but so it's already affordable, and you can get an extra 5 to 6% off, which adds up when it's a $500 battery. Now, that sounds like a lot, but it's really not for dual purpose. And let me explain what is so cool about this battery. So first of all, it's 23 pounds. Even though it is a cranking and deep cycle battery, it still only weighs 23 pounds. It is not a very big battery. Now on the terminals, you can see where you would plug in, where you would actually connect it to the motor, as well as the little smaller screws, whatever you would call it, on the terminal heads, and that is where you would plug in other electronics, your trolling motor and whatnot. Now, unfortunately, this motor is not big enough for electric start, but I do have a bow mount trolling motor. So when I finally do get my dream motor, which is a 9.9 electric start, I will be able to put one battery in my boat, have it start my outboard and run it to the trolling motor on the bow, and have one battery to power my graph, one battery to power my bow mount trolling motor, and start my motor for 23 pounds, one unit, one price. Traditionally, you would run a 60-pound starting, 60-pound deep cycle. You got 120 pounds, 2 units. 23 pounds, 1 unit. I think it's actually even cheaper than buying 2 separate batteries. Unbelievable. So we have covered the significance of lead acid versus lithium in deep cycle. We've covered the significance between cranking and starting batteries. And no, you cannot use a 100 amp hour lithium battery deep cycle to crank your hog. Nope, I tried not to say that. Crank your motor. Now, interestingly enough, their website does say you can use it in cars, but on the actual battery, it says not recommended for starting cars. So do with that information what you will. But I hope you got some value out of today's video. I hope I kind of helped you with some headaches, or maybe even solved some battery problems that you actually had. This battery is an absolute game changer, even though it is not technically the first in the world to do it. It is the first to do it at this price point, and this battery truly will change boating forever. With that being said, as always, tight lines and God bless.